Welcome back to another episode of It's the Story That Matters. I am the man in a pink suit, Ezekiel Drews, Festival Director for MIFA, as well as the CEO of Lucid Films. And we're doing our interview series with different filmmakers. And with me today is award-winning filmmaker Nathan Deming, who has a short film that is part of our festival called February. And he's also been established. He's also got a feature film out there. We'll talk about that later. But Nathan, thanks for jumping on with me.
Hey Ezekiel, thanks for having me.
Very cool. Thank you for doing that. Let's jump in to your film really quick here. So February. So why don't we just, before we jump into February itself, talk to me a little bit about your schedule of this here, because obviously February, comes before February's January. So this is the second of a different monthly type of theme. Where did that start, and where are we at in the timeline right now?
Totally. Yeah. So thanks again for having me. It's really cool to be a part of the festival. So February is the second in my what I'm calling the year project. It's this thing I've been doing for about 2 years now. The idea started after I finished my first feature which came out in 2020. And I have wanted to be making tons of stories about Wisconsin for a long time. And I'm also just kind of obsessed with concepts, and the months of the year immediately kind of leaped out as a way to jump into things. And it was COVID, nobody could shoot anything for a little bit. And I started with January, which that came to the Wisconsin Festival in 2022. And that's a very different story than February, but luckily a year later we got to do February, so you can guess what's next. And but yeah, the idea is I can keep doing these throughout my career, and I hope to, and hopefully eventually they could be something that people in Wisconsin, cross your fingers, look forward to, and because tell a bigger story about our state.
Yeah, very cool. Now, obviously, so January was about a church lady, which I haven't gotten to see. So at some point, I'm sure I'll get to watch that.
I'll show you a link. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But February deals with I like to call it's a nuanced portrayal of the immigrant experience. So I've gone to watch it. I've seen, the film, and I get to do a review on the film. But for a lot of people who don't know, what inspired you to tell the story of Miguel, who is a Mexican immigrant to Tomah, Wisconsin?
Well, yeah. Well, we shot it in Tomah. It's kind of a nameless town, but definitely shot in Tomah and Eau Claire, Wisconsin, so western Wisconsin. Yeah. Well, so the January is about a 75-year-old white lady in kind of a shrinking church. She's volunteering during a last-minute wedding, and just a completely different set of characters. So each month of the year is going to focus on a completely different group of people. And Marty, the church lady, is an established, been there forever, all these qualities that I was like, who's the most opposite I could think of? And an immigrant came to mind, somebody who's just brand new, who everything about Wisconsin would be kind of a foreign experience, not just the language, but maybe even the weather, just all these things to kind of see the state through fresh eyes. So that's where it started, and then just kind of snowballed from there.
Perfect. Now, the film tackles a lot of different themes like loneliness, cultural differences, and one that's we're Wisconsin people here, and obviously that despite the fact that we're kind of a purple state, where we kind of have a mixed bag of people. There's still racism that people have to kind of deal with, and even up here, it's not we're not down in the Texas Mexican border. We're Wisconsin and the UP and Canada, right? But it's interesting that we had the Mexican aspect to this racism. And so how did you kind of, with trying to balance this out, how did you approach these, heavier subjects with Miguel's, personal journey of of his story here?
Well, you've seen the film, so and I guess I won't give too much away for people who eventually see it. But obviously, it's it doesn't get too heavy into things. It's definitely a theme. I think despite how divided we are now politically and all that stuff. I guess I believe in, and part of this project, which will take me 10 years, I'm trying to make some lasting themes. And I think a genuine American theme is that despite our differences, we try to get along. So that's sort of where the story goes, maybe for good or bad. And just about kind of radically different people finding connection. But yeah, it was but I also wanted to be true to the immigrant experience and just kind of like, you know, all those little things that happen. I mean, even when we were filming, I'm sad to say, like some little things happened to the cast, the Latino cast that in Wisconsin, which is kind of a bummer, you know, just like, and then seeing it through their eyes, like, yeah, that, and they're, because they were from California, they were coming out to film, and you know, just little things happen. You go, okay, yeah, that's how it is sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of us are sometimes just deeply set in our own ways and our own
Yeah.
views, and it's hard to kind of adopt a mindset change, so that way we can all just kind of, you know, for lack of a better phrase, get along better at least. The setting in Wisconsin, which I know you said, so it's not specifically Toma, it's just kind of a nameless city. So
Yeah,
this setting is pretty central to Miguel's story. How did you end up choosing just, you know, this location up in Bufu nowhere, Wisconsin, and how does that really contribute to the themes you were going for with the film?
Well, it's definitely something I'm going to keep exploring throughout. I mean, there's kind of a juxtaposition of this kind of more historic downtown core, and then the interstate, you know, which is like, you know, that's where all the hotels and fast food chains are. And I grew up in Toma. I feel like over my lifetime, which hasn't been that long, just watched it kind of completely change from, used to be a little bit more culture and stuff going on in the small town, and now it's kind of all just gravitated towards, you know, KFC, McDonald's, you know, like all this stuff, what, you know, and so that's like a little bit of a background theme of some of it, just kind of like how our culture has been shifting a little bit. Uh, but like one of my favorite locations that I just knew I had to shoot there was the Toma Cash Store, which is on Superior Avenue in Toma. If you guys haven't been, it's really cool. It's one of the things that like I'm sad about now that there's Targets and Walmarts everywhere. It's kind of really cool old-fashioned department store is less used, but the owner, John Rose, was super nice to us. He let us shoot there for free. We just like took over the store for a couple hours, and it was a lot of fun.
So that's the location where Miguel gets introduced to ice fishing, right?
Yes, where he sees the
Yeah.
display. Yeah.
Yeah. So that scene is actually like a key turning point in the film.
Yeah, yeah.
So I gotta say, it threw me for a loop completely. Of because I would not take, hey, a, you know, Mexican immigrant and ice fishing, two things that are, you know, when you say like a fish out of water, you know, that's one of the things that would never kind of just pop together for me. So how did you decide that this was the specific activity, and what was the plan for this as some kind of symbol for Miguel's journey?
That's a good question. So when we meet Miguel, he's been in America for about a month. He's living with his sister's family, and his sister's been there for a while. So she's like fully kind of acclimated and stuff. And she's got kids she's raising. She's just fully in her own world. But Miguel's, as far as we know, when we meet him, he's like single, he's alone, he's young. He doesn't have anything to kind of grab onto, and he's just lonely. And I've moved around several times for school and then for work, and right now I'm in LA, and it's not the same experience at all. But I have had, you know, these periods where you get to start over somewhere completely new, and it's all so alienating for a little bit until you find something familiar. And maybe it's not the same thing that you knew, but just, you know. So for Miguel, we give a little backstory. It's mentioned. I mean, clearly he's been fishing. He likes fishing, and he's in Wisconsin. He just had no idea that he could go fishing in the middle of winter.
Right.
And then he hits on it, and then he's like kind of obsessed with it. And that's sort of also what happened to me as I was writing. Is I've been ice fishing like once as a kid, but like, you know, forgot about it. And then getting back into it and then wanting to write a film about it, I was like, it's such a cool, interesting, unique experience that like especially for the people who stay out there all night. Like I was just kind of obsessed with the aesthetics of it too, that you're just sitting on a black void under a black void in your own little world. And it's just this great way that anybody, no matter like how much money you have, you can just go get away, you know, just be on your own. And you really do feel like you kind of own the world when you're out there because it's just so, there's so much space.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of going up the ice fishing, so I know that the guy who played Carl, Richie Gordon. So
Richie.
in our review, so I did mention, you know, his casting was amazing. I really enjoyed just his whole performance. So how did you go about finding these guys for this role? I know you said you got some of the Latino actors from LA, but how did you get Richie?
Yeah, so the majority of the cast came from LA or Chicago. The Latino cast all from LA. But this role of Carl, so for people who haven't seen the film, there is a ice fisherman character, somebody who knows a lot about ice fishing that agrees to take Miguel ice fishing, and he's got a few screws loose and stuff. And I knew a lot of what I wanted the character to be, which is some kind of very authentic northern man, you know. And we were casting, and I was just like, I'm getting people to do a character that felt so fake, you know. And part of this person, I felt like you should just look at them and know, you know, just kind of the way when you drive, you just see certain people like, oh, I think I know that guy. And so I love Richie. I didn't know Richie before this, but shout out to Richie. He did a great job. And so basically, I just put up an ad on Craigslist, and kind of out of desperation, even though we were casting mainly out of LA and Chicago, and I put one up in Wisconsin and just said, I'm looking for a crazy ice fisherman. And I got a couple responses, a couple bites, to use the fishing metaphor. And then Richie's wife, Anna, who's also great, she just emailed me and said, this is literally my husband, LOL. And I said, oh, okay, can you send me a picture? And she sent me a picture that's like straight, it looks like a close-up from the movie. It's just like immediately the whole film came together. I was like, this is the man. And then Richie, to his credit, Richie, he's kind of a jack of all trades. He's done a lot of stuff. He's never done acting before. And the openness and willingness that he threw himself into it, and like into a kind of brand new friendship with me, like I was just really touched that he was as flexible as he was, because there's a lot of little things to learn about. I mean, other people obviously go to school for years to figure out how to act on film, and I think he's just got a lot of natural talent, and then also just kind of fearlessness that he just kind of rolled with it. And yeah, I was super proud of how that came together.
Yeah, well, he's definitely a natural for it. Um, in our review, so I highlighted about he had some bold writing choices, but there was also some stuff with the script occasionally about falling into some trope traps, and I mean, usually
Rope.
trope.
Keep
So
going.
really, it comes back to probably the theme about battling racism. Now, some of the people that I saw in there that had this were primarily old white people, which obviously that can, you know, add that in there. But how are you trying to navigate so that way, like that wasn't like a one-noted cliche, while trying to make something relatable and impactful to Miguel's story?
Totally. Yeah, no, that's a great question. Because yeah, like, well, kind of like I already touched on, like it's a theme of the film, but I didn't want it to be the theme. Like there's definitely another movie in there that's like completely about that, and you'd have to just change a lot of the story to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there was like some other extra stuff we filmed too, you know, him getting ignored, Miguel getting ignored on the street, things like that that we grabbed, you know, that were realistic. But then, you know, ultimately, as we kept putting it together, we were like, that's the same thing. That's the same thing. You know, we had other variety of people being mildly racist, and then it was like, just the only one we really need is one guy, and then the guy in the store scans, that reads to me that that's exactly what would happen. And it is kind of true though that these small towns right now, at least, like you travel around them, and generally the population is a little bit older as you explore it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that you and I can probably agree that a lot of younger people are trying to make a name for themselves, or at least trying to make their impact in cities, and that's probably why you don't see as many of our age kind of of people up in those small towns. And if we even if we do live in those,
Jobs too. Yeah, yeah.
we're also constantly traveling to the city anyways in order to go do what we need to. So, obviously, like I said, like you said, I'm sorry, it's not that that was the theme. It was just something that I had noticed. And it wasn't like super heavy-handed. It was just kind of there was several times, and obviously, I think that still overall for the story it worked. So it's not nothing like critical or anything like that. But it was just noticeable. So, but I think that that's part of the whole immigrant story is that these people don't look like me, and obviously there's going to be some kind of feelings one way or another, whether it's racism or just plain ignorance about how people
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to act with somebody who isn't from where they are. And that doesn't even have to be the subject of race. That could just be like people are from different cities and different cities act different ways.
Totally.
But I think that it lends itself well for the story that you were telling with Miguel. Now, jump into the sound design. So I've seen many films that have come into our festival, and I specifically mentioned in the review that the sound design had really good sound quality. And I mean, what I mean is that we're not having incredibly huge different sound levels jumping up and down. You see that a lot of times, even in professional Hollywood films, is that there's always just like we're talking very small, and it's boom, crash, and all this stuff, and you're just like, oh my god, I'm deaf now because I was leaning into the TV, and now I'm just deaf because of this scene change. So, how did you what was that process? So that way, people like me who are getting maybe a little older now and are trying to avoid going deaf, any tips and tricks for other filmmakers so that way they don't fall into this pitfall?
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I would say that from every aspect of the production, although we were a small team, from the acting to the DP, Leo Perman, who I should also talk about. He's an award-winning DP from Milwaukee, so we should talk about it more later.
Yeah.
Just had a film in TIFF. Yeah, every aspect, including sound, I wanted to just be as professional as possible. Yeah, this is my third movie since my feature, so just want to keep hitting a kind of Hollywood production level as much as we can, even though we're a crew of 10 in the middle of Wisconsin in 20 degrees on the middle of a lake, or like just try to keep everything so that it could look as good as possible and stand the test of time. And I think that's the really fun thing right now for indie filmmakers that wasn't as available 20, 30 years ago, is that with like the digital cinema cameras and even the audio technology, you can kind of start to hit really professional levels for much cheaper than you would have had, or without the extreme technical knowledge you would have needed to run a film camera or whatever, all that stuff. So I don't know. I had a great sound mixer, I guess is the real answer. Matthew Keelkopf is his name, and a great sound editor, Jotan Gilbert. They're both professionals in LA, and so they just did a professional job. And but it was something we spent a lot of time on. Like I wanted, especially like the sound was a big part of it, right? Like because part of Miguel's journey to get out into the ice tent is it just kind of everything up until then is very loud, right? Like I know you just said, oh good, it wasn't too loud, but I mean, like you have he's working at a hotel in the laundry room and it's just and he's at the restaurant that his sister works at and it's really loud and his sister's like asking him questions, and his brother-in-law is just it's just noise all the time. So he just wants his peace and quiet.
Yeah. He wants to just play games on his cell phone, I saw. So
right.
Yeah, but you mentioned you had a crew of 10. I gotta tell you, I've worked on some different films up here in the Milwaukee and in greater Milwaukee, or even central Wisconsin, and sometimes you're lucky to have a crew of 5 people. Sometimes you've got a crew of 2 people, and it's you've got one guy with the camera and the other guy with the boom, and the director's the one with the camera because they're doing the camera work as well. And it's you I would say so. 10 people, that's fantastic. That's like a big production for for Wisconsin. So
Well, and for like a totally independent thing, yeah. I mean, it's small. This is a passion project. A lot of people on it were experienced with it, working a lot more, but yeah, luckily they worked with what we had.
yeah, for sure. So February, the film is nearly 48 minutes long, so which is longer than a lot of short films that are out there. It's almost a feature length. Um,
Right.
so what made you decide? And I guess I don't know if was January about the same length or what? What
January is about 24 minutes.
is about 24 minutes. So this one
Yeah.
was about double that.
Mhm.
So how did you decide on the length for this one? And what challenges did you feel that, in terms of for pacing and keeping the story engaging, how did you feel that those were the biggest challenges that you had to address? How did you keep the head to the ground, the grind going during
Yeah.
all that?
No, no, that's a good question. Well, since I feel like I get to make up my own rules because it's my own project, this 12 film thing, and like March will probably be a little longer, and April will be even longer, and then I think by May or June they'll probably be close to feature length. I mean, but I want the pieces to just come into fruition themselves, you know. And January had a very specific narrative that built a certain way, and we even had stuff we cut out of it a little bit just because we're like, oh, that's this is the right length. And then we kind of had the same journey with February, which is yeah, I was calling them long shorts. They're kind of like novellas or something like that, you know, because I like short films. I've made short films, but I didn't want to just make a short film. And there's kind of rules that go along with it, right? Because, you know, for most, yeah, if you're being wary of film festivals, which of course I am, but I'm also just really happy that Wisconsin, main venue I want for this anyway, was, you know, kind of happy to get it in
Mhm.
its true form. And I mean, yeah, you're told that it's got to be less than 15 minutes, and of course that makes sense for programmers, but that's not my problem, right? I want to make a film, and uh, I think just the amount that I wanted to get into the characters, and this film specifically just has a very slow, intentional build that once they get in the ice tent, just you know, without that build, I don't think the same emotional release is there. Or whatever happens. We don't know. We don't know what happens, but
Right. We don't know what happens.
I don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the dynamic between Miguel, Louis, and Carl are, really pivotal to the film because that's where a lot of the development comes for Miguel. What message do you hope that the audience kind of takes away from these different dynamics?
That's a good question.
I hope so.
Good question. Well, okay, so yeah, I'm gonna be exploring a lot of different things through each film. I hope to, but just a direct parallel with January is that January focused on women, and the two main characters that connect are women, and then kind of a lot of the side characters are women. So in this one, I really wanted to explore manhood, I guess, and just varieties of masculinity. And you got Miguel, who's very restrained for a lot of the movie. You have Carl, who's like over the top, gruff, shut up, like drink your beer kind of the guy. And then you have Louis too, who's kind of doing this performative masculinity that's different when he's with all of his work buddies, right? And then the way he is with his wife, which is actually kind of tender and just funny and trying to connect with her. But then when he's with the guys, he's trying to be a guy, So
Everyone's playing video games online and like cussing them out and stuff.
yeah. So I did very much want to just kind of explore because I'm just fascinated with all aspects, I guess, of what make us who we are. Obviously, gender is a big part of that, so that was a big part of this film.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. What was the most challenging scene to shoot, and why? And what did you have to overcome, and how did you overcome that?
Hmm. That's a good question. Let me think.
Put you on the spot here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the immediate thing that comes to mind is that this wasn't, once we got into it, it was super fun, but we filmed on the lake, and it was frozen, and we were told that there was 2 feet of ice, and but then one day, I think right before we shot, like a day, it shot up to 50 degrees, right? And then went back down. So our nerves were a little bit there. Uh-oh,
You did a thumb. It's all right.
um, but yeah, so we had to, we their truck goes on the ice, and then we have, we have a car that we're following and filming out of, and then we have another car with all of our supplies. So we have more than just the picture car, the truck that we're filming with, and we're seeing all over the lake. There's a ton of SUVs, and of course, if we went up to them, they'd probably laugh at us for being nervous, but especially when you're making a film and you're trained in safety and stuff, you have to come up with these contingency plans, right, for what would happen if something went wrong, and when you're a lower budget thing too, it's kind of like, well, what would we do if just the truck goes in the ice, and
Save the camera, all the footage.
yeah, just save the camera.
You're not saving the car if you're in the middle of the lake.
Yeah.
That's a lost cause.
Yeah, so that was like surreal, definitely at first, and I've since been out back on that lake, like kayaking in the summer. It's also kind of funny. I like kayak to the spot that we filmed at, and
Nice. As a director, what would you say is the most rewarding part of making February was?
Well, I'm trying not to say that was a good question, but that was a good question.
I'm gonna put that on the placards. Be like, that's a good question.
He asked great questions. Every question. This was just like kind of a special film for me throughout. I mean, each film for the most part, I don't know, you kind of like, there's usually something to take away from it, but this one was just like, there was so many things. This is the first time I worked with Leo, the DP, and got to know him, and he's a great guy. And it was really cool to film it with another Wisconsin filmmaker who also went to a great film school. He went to AFI out in LA, and we liked a lot of the same movies. That was just like a really cool bonding experience, and the just delicate touch he brought to the film's kind of palette, I guess. I just was so happy with how that turned out. And then the production designer, Maria, she's from LA. We had never worked together before, and she just had a lot of really nice touches throughout. It was really thrilling, and of course, it's just so much fun working with actors and seeing them bring things to life. And then kind of I mean, I just selfishly, it's fun as a director to have completely different, working relationships or like styles you're working with. So David, who played Miguel, I mean, he's a trained actor. So, I had one way of interacting with him. And in the same scene, then I have Richie, who's just so much like fun figuring out how we can make it come alive for him. So yeah, I think all that stuff was like just surprising and fun, and I just, every time I get to film in Wisconsin in winter, it's honestly really special. It's just kind of a magical time, and like just everywhere you point the camera, just kind of like, I don't know, the whole thing was really fun. And then I think we finished filming on Super Bowl Sunday, and it was got to go watch the Super Bowl. The whole thing was fun.
That's awesome. All right, well, let's talk about your other works here. So we've talked a lot about February. So we talked, kind of a tiny bit about January. But you mentioned before, so you've got a feature film that's out right now. I believe you said on Prime Video. Tell me about that.
On Amazon, yeah. My feature is called Speaking in Tongues, and it's about a young college student who joins a megachurch and gets really involved with it. And then the more he gets involved with it, he starts to question certain things. And it's kind of a nuanced portrayal of Christianity. We tried to be as realistic and as neutral as possible, and just kind of tell a simple story about young people wrestling with faith, with some experiences I had, some experiences of other people I knew. But yeah, I'm really proud of it. It's on Amazon. It's also on YouTube. The director's cut is on YouTube, and people can watch it there. And but that we premiered that at the Austin Film Festival, which was also an amazing festival, a really fun experience, and yeah.
Nice, very cool. Now you and I, so we met through Instagram, right? So if people want to follow, February, and they want to follow, any other films and stuff that you're working on, I know that there's a couple different Instagram handles that you got out there. I've got Nathan.Deming, and
Yeah,
then
that's my film. Yeah.
that's your primary Instagram, right?
Hmm.
All right, and I believe that there was also I want to say it was February
I
dot
think it's
project.
February.year project. That's the film's Instagram.
Okay, and then so if people want to follow you and see what else you're working on, so they want to go to the Nathan.Deming.
That's my Instagram. My website's nathandeming.com. And then if you want to see more about February, februaryfilm.com. And then, yeah, I do have a proper short, an actual less than 15-minute short that's on the festival circuit right now called Sock City, also set in Wisconsin. And maybe a parallel project based on towns. We'll see. But that's what I got coming out right now. And then got some feature stuff in the works. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to still be in touch about all the other stuff that you got coming out here. Anywhere else that people can follow you at? Obviously, Instagram is key, but do you have a Facebook page or anything like that? I know you got your website, nathandeming.com.
I tend to strongly resist social media. So right now, I'm just Instagram. But I want people to see my things. So, but that's the gateway. My website. Also, a lot of my stuff's on YouTube. You can find that, or you can just look up my name and see where they're selling the movie or whatever. So yeah.
Gotcha. Sounds like Instagram is the number one place, and then nathandeming.com for number two. So all your social media fans can find you on Instagram.
Yeah, the dozens.
Dozens and dozens times
Yeah.
10, let's say. Why not?
Yeah.
But Nathan, thank you so much for jumping on. And then
Yeah, thank you.
A quick thanks to our sponsors, the two sponsors that we have right now for the Milwaukee Independent Film Awards. We have Xerox and we have Hometown Grub and Pub. They are helping us with getting our reach out there and being able to do more things like this, getting more exposure for filmmakers, whether they're based out of Wisconsin or if they're from anywhere else in the United States, or even if they're across the pond, maybe in, let's say, Italy or something like that. They're helping us to get more people, more recognition for the indie filmmaking scene, which is 100% what we're dedicated towards helping to promote. So again, my guest, Nathan Deming, thank you so much for jumping on. It's the story.
Yeah, thanks, man. And yeah, thank you so much. It was fun.
Thank you. And we'll talk to you soon.